You're listening to The Main Loop, a bi-monthly discussion about what goes into making games that are well-made, interesting, and most importantly, fun to play. This is episode 3.
Hey everybody, it's Stuart.
And Sean. We are back after the holiday break.
Yeah, I had a good time. How was your break?
I had a great time, actually. This was our first Christmas with the kids, with the little babies, and so that was pretty fun. And yeah, got some cool stuff, hung out with family, had a fun New Year's. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, me too. Went cross-country skiing for the first time in like a decade. That was really nice. Had some time to play some games, and yeah, just all around good times.
Did you get any fun gaming-related gifts?
I got a couple for myself, actually. Picked up Invisible Ink for my iPad. Picked up Don't Starve Alone for Steam, and then one other game that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. I have not played Don't Starve Alone, but I've seen it a lot.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. You know, who knows? It'll be an adventure.
All right. Well, this week's episode is all about the platformer. This is one of the oldest genre of games and the most popular over the last several decades. And we just wanted to take a look at kind of its history, its impact, its legacy, and what we think makes and has made the platformer such a huge part of gaming overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a funny little thing that it's so different from most other game types that it doesn't really reflect reality in a big way, but it's just kind of stuck around and kind of latched onto people's brains even as technology has evolved. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's not generally one of those storied experiences that we've talked about when you're platforming. It's not like you're living out some real life story when you're jumping through the Mushroom Kingdom.
Yeah, and it's not like, it's not even like really representative of reality. Like it's little people jumping up and down on screens, but it kind of sticks in a really interesting way. So I think it'll be fun to chat about.
Yeah, totally. So let's start with just a little bit of the history of the platformer. So obviously when video games were becoming more advanced and more popular, and going from sort of the traditional top-down representation of real-world things, I think of games that were really predominantly sort of maze-based. A lot of games like on the Atari 2600 were glorified mazes where you had some items you had to collect and things you had to move through and enemies that you had to either fight or avoid. But then you had games like Donkey Kong and Lode Runner and Burger Time that were a side perspective and that had you climbing up ladders and moving across and sometimes jumping across these different platforms. And that's really where this term kind of arose, was from these games that had you climbing to different platforms. But they were mainly called, actually I was looking up, referred to as climbers, which I thought was funny. We don't really have climber games anymore. We pretty much just have platformers.
Yeah, and at least we don't call them climbers anymore, even if they kind of are sometimes.
Yeah. And we don't, things like Ice Climbers and those kind of games, I don't really think of anymore. Even games like the Mario Brothers, which was also kind of in Super Mario Brothers 3, you could play that 1v1 game where you're kind of climbing up the platforms and avoiding the spiky guys and trying to collect more points. That was more of a climber, but yeah, there's not really, not like the way the platformer has continued. I haven't really seen a continuation of the climber unless there's something that you think of that I'm not thinking of.
Like Mark of the Ninja and like some other stealth games, I think, that are sort of like platformers and you do some climbing in them. But I would never classify it as a climber because it's just one element of sort of a broader platforming genre that I think platformer just kind of does a better job of describing all of it.
Makes sense to me. So let's talk a little bit about why platformers have become such a thing. Obviously, when you had a game like Wonder Boy on the Sega Master System, and then even more so Super Mario Brothers on the NES, that suddenly just became the kind of game. 90% of the games I remember playing on the NES and the Super Nintendo were some variation, some riff on the platforming genre.
Yeah, and for me, I think, sort of thinking more theoretically, as I am wont to do, it's really about, I think, what platformers capture are like humans' relationship with gravity. So even if they're not like physical representations, and it's not like you could recreate a platformer, like really represents any particular element of human life, it kind of captures our relationship with gravity, which is like being stuck to the ground, falling, and then jumping, and sort of the excitement of sort of leaving the earth and leaving the ground for those seconds, to where, just the act of jumping is kind of a very pleasurable thing to do as a person,
Yeah.
beyond everything else.
Well, and then I think of games like Super Mario World, or I guess really Super Mario Brothers 3, although I actually hadn't played that until I had a Super Nintendo. When you get that feather and suddenly Mario has a cape, and you're able to actually now overcome that boundary, and you're able to actually fly and actually go much higher than you've been able to before. I remember what an exhilarating and fun feeling that was. And I still remember the level in Super Mario World where you could get a feather and then hit a switch, and there'd be all these coins. And the whole point of this section was just to fly up as high as you can, and then do the little glider, the little barrel. Remember that thing?
Yep.
With your cape back and forth to get all the coins. And my friends and I, when we were kids, we would just replay that level in that section over and over, because the flying was just such a fun thing to be doing.
Yeah, and even in the recently released Super Mario Run, when you jump off of a spring and then hold down, you glide down in sort of a spinning motion.
Yeah.
And even that is just like, it's exciting in a very visceral way, even though it's like 2D,
No, I totally get that. And I think of things also like the double jump, games that sort of introduced the double jump, and which is now pretty common. But again, this was suddenly we've really now broken out of the bounds of, a double jump is obviously not something that's actually possible in real life. Yet it's something that we love to do. It's something so satisfying of being able to time it and make that extra distance or that extra height, and to feel more like a badass ninja doing this weird midair maneuver.
And I don't know if it's because of just how ingrained it is in the genre, or if it's like something deeper, but the double jump still feels pretty natural. Like it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything weird within the context of the game. And I think that's what makes it so successful.
Doesn't feel like you're cheating.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the game just like letting me do something to do something for a game mechanic. It feels very realistic about what a character could do, which kind of leads me into sort of my second point from more of a design perspective. Jumping is a very easy thing to have a player do, right? It's a single tap or a single button press action, but it's also incredibly easy to layer on all of these other mechanics in a very sort of intuitive way. So like we have like double jumping, we have tap and hold to like, glide. There's other things where like if you jump on enemies in midair, you get certain actions. You can reverse direction by jumping. There's like all of these different avenues of gameplay that a developer or designer has access to that kind of makes it very easy to innovate on top of, which is one of the reasons I think it's been so successful, because it's not just a single action. It's a single action which can actually sort of expand into a world of possibility.
Yeah, it's so I think of just the progression we had in the Super Mario Brothers, the original games on the NES, where in Super Mario Brothers, it was all about just timing your jumps correctly. You had to know, you had to get familiar with how far you could jump, how high you could jump. You couldn't even do the thing where you could bounce off enemies to jump higher. You always had a fixed height that you could jump and a fixed distance, even at full speed. And then Super Mario Brothers 2 introduced really 4 different jumping mechanics. Mario was this just sort of baseline, normal jumping. Toad couldn't jump as high. Luigi could jump super high, and that could actually be harder to control. And then, of course, Princess had her like her float jump that she actually, I'm so glad that they put that in Super Mario Run. That was such a fun little throwback.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And so again, now you have this new design, just kind of new design avenue. And I love what they did in Super Mario Brothers 2, because it wasn't like there were parts of the game that you couldn't beat without a particular character, but you learned the parts that were easier or more fun with a particular character. You know, there were parts where,
right.
if you have Luigi on this level, it's way easier. And mostly Princess Peach was pretty OP throughout that game.
Yeah. And that kind of, there's a designer who actually, for Magic the Gathering, the card game, he calls it lenticular design.
Okay.
And basically what he means by it is it's a design that's really easy for a new player to pick up, and they won't see all of the possibilities available to them, but it's something that's deep enough for an experienced player to take advantage of and really enjoy and sort of execute on in a way that a newer player can't. And that's like exactly what jumping allows a designer to do, because a more experienced player who's been with a game longer is going to know those things about, like, either if it's Peach in Super Mario,
right,
or if it's, you know, another character in like Mark of the Ninja, where if you jump and then throw things, you can sort of accomplish things that wouldn't be accessible otherwise. But a newer player can just like enjoy jumping around and getting to different platforms, and that's sort of a very rewarding avenue for them as well.
That makes sense. So I had a note in here about what makes platforms engaging. I mean, they can hold things and they're fixed. They have dimensions.
You can put things on them, actually.
You can
speak on them even.
them.
It's crazy, really.
Yeah. My platform will be one high enough to push Vicky off to her death.
It's our first community reference. Well done, sir.
Yeah, it's about time. So, but the things that, you know, I think always caught me about platformers, and I think the reason that they catch any player, is they combine a number of things that really make them feel like an actual skill-based game. And that's actually what I think bad platformers do badly, is they don't feel like your skill mattered. They just feel like the game was just out to get you, so you just got screwed.
Kind of like Infinite Runners.
Kind of like Infinite Runners. Like the whole point is to make you die so that you have to buy more energy crystals or whatever.
Yep.
But I think of these elements of pattern recognition and memorization. So you've got to know the layout and recognize that, like, enemies come in waves. There are a lot of levels in Super Mario Brothers 2 in particular where it's like the enemies are going to come in this huge fixed wave, and the only way you're going to really be successful is if you can actually memorize that pattern, the way they're going to roll through. So you've got pattern memorization and recognition. You've got precision and timing. So you've got to get used to just the feel of how far you're going to jump. What happens when I let off the jump? Is there going to be some kind of sliding momentum? Am I just going to drop down? Am I going to continue forward? So getting used to that, getting that precision and that timing down. And then also just the basic mechanical skills. So it's not just click and you go to a point or to a direction. You actually have to have those motor skills involved. And all those things combine to provide like this really great mix of, like, there's challenge involved. There's frustration, but it's not I'm quitting this game forever frustration. It's I'm going to beat this game frustration. But there's also a sense of mastery. Like, I can actually get better at this. Like, I can get better at timing jumps in Mario. I can get better at timing the wall jumps in something like Batman on the NES. Like, I can actually improve on these things, and suddenly I can fly through these levels and feel pretty badass and feel pretty good about myself while I'm playing this game.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a Bit Trip Runner. It's one of the few games I've played all the way through. It's a rhythm-based platformer, basically, where, similar to Mario, the enemies or the coins drop at very specific points, but it's rhythm-based, so you're trying to hit the correct combination of jumps and slides and dives and kicks as the obstacles approach you. Okay, yeah. And it's really exciting because it's a pretty basic game when you think about it, but the extra element of adding the music in makes it really, really rewarding when you hit, like, the jump or the kick right when the music hits the beat. it kind of layers it in a way that makes you feel very successful and then rewards you with sound for that success. And I think that's something that like the platformer genre can do in a way that potentially even, you know, other types of games have a harder time with.
Yeah, there's something so rewarding and satisfying about like the later levels with the ships and all the cannons in Super Mario Brothers 3, when you just have a good run where you're jumping and you're bouncing off the cannonballs and you're dodging the little wrench things and you're hitting the guys coming out of the trapdoors, and you just feel like, yeah, like I've gotten good at this. I think again of Super Mario 64, where you're getting good at the wall jumps and the backflips and the triple jumps and the jump forward and all these things that involve a lot of motor skill and mechanical skill, and also a lot of timing precision, that when you're executing them well, it's just this, it's so satisfying, and it makes all the frustration and all the controller throwing and cursing at your TV, it makes it all worth it.
I mean, who doesn't love cursing at their TV though? That's kind of, but what this kind of makes me think about from a design perspective is a jump is a pretty easy thing to accomplish. It's not from a technical perspective, it's not taxing, right? There's only a few variables that you really have to think about, which is like, how are they going to move through space? How are they going to fall? How are they going to jump? Which gives the designer a lot of control, because there's not a lot of technical engineering that necessarily has to go into it. So the game I sort of think of is Thomas Was Alone.
I thought you were going to bring this up.
I mean, I love it. It has the best jump I've ever experienced in my life, because they tailored each jump to be unique to a character, so that it felt they were basically Thomas Was Alone is basically a game about sort of traversing these different territories as a small block, and there's a narrator that kind of tells you what's going on, and you derp along. But really what gives the game life is that each character, each different color block, has a different jump mechanic, and they can either jump far or jump high. One of them can't even really jump at all, and so you have to get them to sort of figure out how they can best work together to get them to the next level. And sort of that ability to focus on a mechanic in a way that lets it be very specific is what is a unique part of the platformer.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game, and again, that the jumping feels really, really good in that game. And that's what's interesting is you talk about how it's a simple thing for a designer, and yet when a game has bad jumping, like it's one of those things like when the jumping's good, you don't really think about the jumping, but when the jumping is bad, I mean that can just destroy the entire experience of a game if the jumping is no good. If you watch the Angry Video Game Nerd, I mean, the majority of the rants on that channel come from games that have bad jumping. Either it's difficult to time, like you can't tell where you're going to land, so you have to be super precise, or there's weird momentum mechanics, or you just drop down when you stop jumping and you don't have forward momentum, or if it feels like laggy, like you hit jump and it takes it a little bit before you jump. Like there's so many things, I feel like, so many variables that can go wrong and create a bad jumping experience, and that can ruin an entire game.
Yeah, and I guess just to clarify, I was talking about more from a technical perspective. So like the variables are all known. It's not like Call of Duty where, you know, the graphics and everything are very intensive, but getting the variables right from a design perspective is difficult, because you have to really understand what you're trying to accomplish, and it can be so expressive because there can be so many different combinations. I think it's actually like one of the first things, if you like try to build a basic platformer on your own, which really isn't that hard with a lot of game engines to just like get it set up. But then like you jump for the first time and you're like, what is this? This is the worst experience ever. I thought this was super easy.
Right.
And you realize, oh my gosh, no, it's actually really hard to make a jump feel the way it's supposed to.
Okay, now it's funny when you talk about jumping from a technical perspective, the first thing that came to my mind was like crappy Flash games.
Yeah. Yep.
Where, it's great that it's easy to make a game, but then you play like a crappy Flash game and you jump and your character just like floats what feels like 1,000 feet in the air, and you have to kind of like awkwardly guide them left and right just to hit like a simple platform.
Yep.
Like when it's not, you can't just predict a simple arc from destination to target. Like you have to like do all this crazy like floaty manipulative stuff just to get there. And then I think of a game like Super Meat Boy, which again is just this modern platformer where the jumping is just excellent. It is almost pixel perfect as far as I know when I jump from this location, I know where a normal jump will take me, I know where a long jump will take me, and I know where like the sprinting jump, how far that's going to take me. And that's another great game where you get punished for missing a jump, and the game is intentionally hard. Like the game is built to try to kill you. But I remember playing through that game and again, never once feeling like, oh, that wasn't fair.
Right.
I totally should have made that. Like I always felt like, yep, I missed that. Like I mistimed that, or I miscalculated the distance. I misjudged where that saw blade was going to be. And so I need to try that again and keep practicing and keep trying to get better. And that was actually a really fun experience. I'm actually getting better at this game, and I can, like, you watch some guys do like speed runs of a game and you think I could never ever
you're just like, well,
play like they're playing. Nice. But then a game like Super Meat Boy, it's like, sure, if I could actually put in the time and get good at this game, because there's this mix of video game skills and just straight up mechanical, like hand-eye coordination, real world skills involved.
Yep, for sure. And so I think that that's kind of a good jumping off point into like what we feel like the future of the platformer is now that sort of, VR and AR and all of that stuff is coming along. Where does the platformer fit in? Is it going to go away? Do we think it's going to stay? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, I have high hopes, as it says here in the notes. Sean has high hopes. I think of games like Super Mario 64, which kind of proved that we can do the platform thing in 3D, like with polygons instead of just pixels, and we can actually make an engaging, fun experience with a lot of those same. That's another great example of a game where you have to get better. You have to figure out the timing and the distance and how far you can jump. You also have to get used to this whole new thing of it's not just a left to right, up down. It is in 3 dimensions, and I have to suddenly get better at timing. Like my brain has to do way more calculations to figure out where I'm going to land, and also the ability to do these vertical things. I mean, I think about levels in Super Mario 64 where you're up super high and you're like inching along a ledge, and then you have to do some precision jumps, and like it's stressful. Like you get that vertigo, I'm afraid of falling from this height feeling that you don't really get in a 2D platformer. So, that I think with the era of 3D gaming, we've already proven that platforming can work and you can still have some of that same fun. And then games like Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64 and like Spyro the Dragon on the PlayStation, they kind of took it even further. Crash Bandicoot, I think, is another good example where you're still doing the 3D platforming thing, but there's also now a lot of other objectives. Like there's a lot of other things you need to do. So we can kind of combine platforming with and create this more sort of more fleshed out adventure. So I have high hopes. We both pasted into the show notes at the exact same time about this game coming out called Yooka-Laylee, which is finally coming out this April. Actually, April 11th is the date on their website.
So excited.
Yeah, you were the first one who told me about this. So why don't you tell us more about Yooka-Laylee?
Yeah, so Yooka-Laylee is built by the original creators of Banjo-Kazooie.
So these are some Rare members. Like they were from Rare, which was like the game company for the N64.
Yeah, and they basically, I mean, the only way I can really describe it is like a love letter to a 3D platformer. Like it's the same sort of team up adventure. You're playing a chameleon with his friend Bat, I think, if I remember that correctly. And you're just exploring this. I mean, really just stunningly crafted artistic world, and solving these puzzles and sort of adventuring. And I think it really speaks to the idea of sort of the two main components of what platformers really come down to, which is like sort of scaled down exploration and sort of being able to explore a bunch of different puzzles and areas in a very stylized way, and then jumping and falling, which
Right,
sounds
yeah.
sort of weird, but I think those concepts are going to stay true, regardless of the platform, if you will,
Right.
that they're on.
Well, I think, starting with Super Mario Brothers 3, and then Super Mario World really took it to this whole new level of the mechanical, the skill part is there, right? You've got to be good at these mechanics. But then that exploration side, I mean, think of all the secret levels in Super Mario World, and the difficulty of like the secret star levels that you try to get through to get to the weird colored world. And it's just like there's this high level of challenge and skill and repetition that's required. But you want to do that because you want to find out what's over there. I think of levels in Banjo-Kazooie where it's like I'm trying to land this kind of precise, like where you'd shoot through the air while you're flying as Kazooie. Like I want to get this just right because I want to find out what's over in this area, because it looks cool or looks interesting. And yeah, Yooka-Laylee definitely looks awesome. I think it's the most backed, or like the highest, it like got the most money on Kickstarter for any game ever or something like that.
It was like stunningly funded, and they've done like an awesome job of like communicating and providing updates, and the artwork is just like I mean, I can't stop gushing over it because it's incredible.
It looks beautiful. It really does.
Like it looks like what happened when DreamWorks started making, videos or movies that were almost as good as what Pixar was doing. It's like the same thing with like Nintendo. Like this was like, that level of like artistic style and beauty.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I hope that doesn't go over like there was a game that came out this year called Mighty Number 9.
Oh yeah.
Which was made by some people who had been involved with like Mega Man X. It was kind of like some of the Mega Man team. And really it was this, stylized side-scrolling platformer shooter in the vein of Mega Man. Kind of the same thing. It was supposed to be a love letter to Mega Man and side-scrollers. And they got like $3 million on Kickstarter. And it was just one of the worst reviewed games. I mean, people just hated it. They were just like, it's no fun. Where did that money go? So I'm hoping that Yooka-Laylee doesn't kind of go that same route.
Yeah, I have more optimism about it just because everything I heard about sort of Mighty Number 9 was like the communication was kind of bad, and they didn't really do a great job of like explaining what was going on. And
and they started kickstarting another project before they had even like finished Mighty Number 9,
which is like always a great idea.
Yes, yeah. Here, you gave us money for this thing. Well, great. We're gonna build a different thing
with more money that you did.
With more money, if you'd like to give us that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Yooka-Laylee. I mean, the rare team. I mean, that's such a huge pedigree. When I think of the Nintendo 64, that was really my system, the SNES and then the N64. All my friends had PlayStations, but I swore up and down that the N64 was better. And really it was because of games by Rare. I mean, they made GoldenEye, they made Perfect Dark, they made Donkey Kong 64, Jet Force Gemini, Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. I mean, it was just incredible what they were putting out. And then the company Rare was actually picked up by Microsoft, and they went on to make like Kinect Adventures and like basically all the like crappy pack-in Kinect games is what they were stuck on. And now they're kind of, from what I hear, they're kind of free again. And so it sounds like they're able to really put their blood, sweat, and tears into Yooka-Laylee. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping it really feels like a blood, sweat, and tears project.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, kind of to wrap up, I think the principles of a platformer are applicable, to even like AR and VR games, right? Like just because you're sort of exploring in this different way doesn't mean that sort of a more focused, a more stylized, a more sort of jumping and running dependent model is going to go away. It's not like they're all going to be AAA, Tomb Raider or like open world RPGs.
Right.
I think there's still a place for games that are really more about sort of the fundamental mechanics of the player necessarily than the sort of world and the story.
Yeah, especially when you've had games like the new Tomb Raider and This War of Mine and The Last of Us, where it's just how dark and grim. And I'm not saying those are bad games, but they almost start to feel less and less like games and more like this other thing. Like they're kind of a video game, but they're kind of this other narrative form of media. And sometimes you just want something that requires some mechanical skill and focus, some precision and timing, and can provide you with a sense of progression and exploration. And I think platformers really are a great medium for that.
Yep, I think they hit all those notes for sure.
Cool. Well, let's move on and talk a little bit about 2017.
Yeah.
We are now in the new year. The last time we all spaked. Last time we got spaked, it was 2016, and that is no longer the case. It is 2017. So do you have any goals for this year that you set for yourself, particular maybe gaming-wise?
Yeah, actually. So my goal for the year is a little bit ambitious. I'm going to try to play 52 games that I have not played yet. They are
like to completion. No, not to. Like all the way through. Like all the way through the game.
Yeah.
Like still like a certain percentage.
To feel that one out. I think just to like a level of understanding. So my goal is to kind of do sort of design critiques.
I'm sorry. I'm still laughing about to completion, and my wife's in the room and she's not helping.
We're really, it's really a highbrow podcast that we aspire to.
I know this was actually our most like prepared and like thoughtful episode so far, and now that's all gone to crap.
I mean, like any good community episode, right? Anyway.
Okay, so 52 games. You want to play 52 games, one a week.
Yep, one a week, and then do a little write-up on it to sort of try to understand what makes the game fun, what I really liked about the game, and what the game does well. The goal isn't to like write gaming reviews, because most of these will be like fairly old, or like where a gaming review is kind of like, okay, that's great. That game came out 3 years ago. How is that helpful?
Yeah, that'd be like if I just decided like, well, this year I'm going to play through everything in my Steam library, which would be like 6 years later. People would be like, wow, you just played a bunch of games that are now 10 years old.
Which is like fine. I'm sure there's probably a group of gaming hipsters that would be like, yeah, we want those reviews from 6 years ago. But
well, I got kids, man. If it's not on crazy Steam sale or a Humble Bundle, I can't afford it.
Right.
Like a goal for this year is to play Dishonored 2 and Doom. And I'm hoping that somewhere during 2017, I will have the money to buy one or both of those games.
So, I think, just to sort of level up my own game design and game critique skills, just to kind of like dig in that way. And I think it'll be exciting. I think I'll learn a lot about like what it takes to understand a game and, what all that looks like. So I'm kind of excited.
And I'm sorry, our discussion earlier kind of I actually missed your response. But are you trying to play all the way through, or what's your kind of like what do you qualify as like I've played this game now enough to like, or is it just I'm gonna play it and after a 7-day period that's it, no more playing that game?
I think that's a good question. I'm definitely starting on some games early, so it's not just going to be a 7-day period. I think it's really just like how far can I go before I understand the game? I think a good example is going to be like Pokemon Moon, which I'm pretty excited to play just because I've never really done an in-depth design sort of thought process about Pokemon. I don't think I'm going to go all the way through the game. It's pretty clear what's going on, what's going to happen. If it's not, and these are spoilers, sorry about your life in the last 20 years because I don't know where you've been. But it's pretty much on rails. You're going to go through 8 gyms. You're going to fight the final 4. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
But just trying to understand like what is really successful about Pokemon, what does it do well, and trying to dig in there, and once I get to that point, I think I'll stop, and it's going to change game to game. For like narrative games like Pokemon, it's going to be one thing. For more of like a puzzle game like Mini Metro, it's going to be a very different process because you could play that game to infinity and like who knows,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited just to see where I land on what that really means and what amount of time that looks like.
Yeah, I'm excited just to hear more of your thought process of at what point do you feel like you can call, what constitutes understanding a game? Like what has to happen before you can feel like, okay, I get this game and I get it enough to actually try to form like a reasonably sensible thought about it.
Yeah, so you'll be able to find that at amateurmythology.wordpress.com. Because I think I made it to 2005 on the internet now, just like slowly moving my way up in the world.
You have a blog now, yeah. You are caught up with us as of 10 or 11 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I want. So that'll be in the show notes, and love for everyone to follow along, give their comments, sort of see where it goes.
Yeah.
How about you?
If I have a goal for this year, it would be one, just to play more games. I have this tendency to because I work a job that's fairly demanding, especially because I'm still new at what I do. We also have 9-month-old twins who will be a year this March.
That's really exciting.
And so it's 2016 was long and hard, and so I have this tendency when I have free time and I could be playing a game, and I'd even like to be playing a game, I'm just too freaking lazy to do it. Like, I don't want to like get up from the couch and go turn on my computer and like click the buttons. And then when I do, I end up having a really good time and really enjoying myself. So I almost kind of like, I have this like almost guilt complex of like, well, I should just be, if I have free time, I should be reading a book, or I should be, practicing some new coding thing, or I should be like, quote unquote, developing myself.
Right.
Versus just, no, I'm going to go just do something fun because it's fun and games are fun. And I've worked enough for today, and I can, dork around and kind of escape for a little bit. So yeah, I think just kind of trying to play more games in general and play them a little bit more thoughtfully. With the iPhone age, it's so easy to have games just stop being games. Like,
right.
You're playing something every free second, you're on your phone playing some little throwaway game. So it's like you're never actually playing a game anymore. Like, games aren't games. They're just this thing that you're always doing.
Yeah, it's more like scratching a mental itch sometimes.
Right. So trying to move more away from that and more to actually like, no, I'm going to enjoy this. Like, again, I'd really like to play through Doom this year because I've played the demo and it's phenomenal. I mean, just on every level, they've done such a good job. So I'd really like to actually play some time with that. I've been playing World of Warcraft. I'd really like to do actually some of the not single player stuff, like a dungeon or a raid, I think would be really fun to actually do because I've never done that. So yeah, I think if anything, it's just to almost take it a little less seriously and just try to actually have some fun this year.
Nice. I'm looking forward to hearing how we did 12 months.
Yeah, seriously. Any games in particular you're looking forward to this year?
Oh man, so many. I think the big one that I really would like to make sure I play is gonna have to be. How am I doing stalling wise? Is that good? Am I just nailing that?
Can't tell at all. Sounds really natural.
Should I talk slower? Would that be helpful?
Are you stalling? Stalling?
What is
stalling? I can't
stalling?
even. No, wait, I've got it.
Just stall to completion. A couple of the games that I'm really excited about are going to be like Kentucky Route Zero, just because I still haven't gotten around to playing it. And then Papo and Yo, and The Cave, which are all like three very different games. Like Kentucky Route Zero is basically a stylized storytelling platformer. Tie-in! Papo and Yo is like another stylized sort of 3D RPG. And then The Cave is one of Double Fine specials. It's another platformer. What's
Okay.
weird about this one is you're like these adventurers going into a cave, but the cave is sentient. So I'm just like kind of interested to get in there and like see what that's like.
What does that mean? Yeah. No, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. And then FTL, because I still haven't done that, and apparently it's like a really good game.
I have heard lots of good things about that. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to just the Nintendo Switch in general. I'm hoping I can get one this year. I'm hoping that if I get a bonus from work, I can pick one of those up in the spring. So if that happens, then Breath of the Wild, I'm really looking forward to. I love Zelda. I always have, and I actually haven't played because I don't have a 3DS, so I haven't played some of the latest iterations of Zelda. The newest one I played was Twilight Princess. That's I think Twilight Princess is the newest Zelda I've played. I haven't played Skyward Sword. I've played a lot of the Wind Waker HD remake, which is gorgeous. But so Breath of the Wild would be really good. And I'm really looking forward to Yooka-Laylee. I think that looks like a lot of fun. And it looks like it's going to be hopefully right up my alley. Because obviously it's a nostalgic kind of game, because it's like, oh, these are like games that I used to play when I was younger. But it doesn't look like they're not trying to they're not playing the nostalgia thing. Like a lot of games do, where it's like, oh, this game is just like this old thing you used to have.
Yeah,
it actually looks like, no, this is a good game.
Gave them a new thing.
Cool. Did we talk about like favorite games of the year last time?
I don't think we did, but I personally didn't have a ton off the top of my head, just because I didn't game as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, I didn't either, again, for all the reasons that we talked about. New kids, code school. You and I were actually in code school together.
Yeah, we're real developers now. Woo!
Yeah. So I'm sure that some good games came out last year, but I don't really know what they were.
So, maybe by the end of the year, we'll have made it to like 2014 with our game reviews.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds great. Stu, what are you playing this week?
So this week I've been playing Lords of Waterdeep. It's a board game. I've been playing it on my phone. I really love the implementation, because usually so worker placement is like a pretty typical board game style, where the main thing you're trying to do is place your little meeples that you have, and then you get some bonus from them. And usually I find those games like super dry, because there's just like a lot of calculation and trying to figure out what's going on, and it's like, this is boring, what's going on. But on the phone, it's a lot of fun, because the phone does all of that for me, and then I just like take my turn and play it asynchronously with a couple of friends, and it's like super fun. And then the other one that I've been kind of digging into was recommended by a coworker of mine, is Guild of Dungeoneering. It's basically like if you took the basic sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, it's one of the most sarcastic games I've ever played. You're basically like trying to lead a bunch of really stupid adventurers through a dungeon, but it's also got like a deck building fighting theme, along with like some set collection type things. And then you end up just like killing a bunch of your like adventurers, because every time they lose a battle, they just die. So it's like super cynical, but also really hilarious. And it's drawn on like stick figures. And I've been really enjoying it.
That sounds pretty cool. I like the name alone. Sounds awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
So the thing I've actually been playing the most recently is Minecraft. Over the holiday, I kind of got back into Minecraft and spent a lot of time playing it. I had Friday before New Year's Eve off, as well as Monday after New Year's Day. So I had this big 4-day weekend. So I actually spent a lot of time playing Minecraft. It's just a really enjoyable game, especially when I need to get away from kind of the do more, achieve more, accomplish more mindset that I get into. It's fun to play a game that definitely has progression. I mean, you're building more things and you're kind of expanding your little realm and you're exploring more. But for the most part, it's just a really relaxing game, because you can kind of decide how you want to play it at that particular time. Like, do I just want to go exploring a bunch, or do I want to like dig underground a ton, or do I really want to work on kind of improving my farm and like finding more finding more animals and bringing them back, and or do I want to make my house bigger? The most recent time I played, I focused on the world that I'm in. that was generated has near me. There's a lot of pretty big bodies of water, and I was sort of going around them, and then I realized, oh wait, I can build a boat. And so I kind of focused on building boats, and then also like creating waterways to connect those like smaller. So basically creating little rivers to connect all these big lakes, so that I can move I can move a very long distance on the map now entirely by boat, which is really fast. And just kind of learning.
Is that a new experience living in Denver for you?
I have not spent very much time on the water, being from Lincoln, Nebraska, and now living in Denver, Colorado. So that was a lot of fun, actually. Just, again, being able to, like, sometimes I would pick it up and play and just like, screw it. I'm like building some armor and getting swords, and I'm going to go spelunking and like digging through some caves and try to fight the Enderman. Or like another time, like I'm going to try to connect all these waterways by canals so that I can move around by boat. Like it's a really fun experience. I definitely understand. Again, speaking of going way back, Minecraft has been a thing since 2009. But it's been a really, really enjoyable thing for me to play. So I'm really having fun with that, and would like to learn just more about what you can do in that game and how far you can take it. So
cool. That's exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that about wraps up our show for today. As always, you can find us on iTunes. We are not on Stitcher. We're on Google Play Music. You can find all the links to our show and episodes in the show notes, and we also like to tweet that out. I'm at Sean M. Bragg on Twitter. That's SeanMBrage on Twitter. And Stu, you now, of course, have your blog.
I have a blog. Yep. We'll get to Twitter someday. Okay. Maybe by the end of 2017, after Twitter has burned down in a flame.
Okay.
Perfect.
But amateurmythology.wordpress.com.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. You can find me there. I'll be writing every week. I've got something up right now that just kind of talks about what the goals are and how I'm going to do it. So yeah, follow me there.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, we hope you enjoyed this show. If you do enjoy the show and want to drop us a review on iTunes or on Google Play, those really help us, especially reviews on the iTunes store. Those really help other people find the show. And if you're a user of the Overcast podcast app on iOS, you can also do recommendations through there, and that also helps people find our show. So we hope you have a great week, and thanks for listening.